ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaskar my dear friends. This video is on Ramana Maharshi's 40 verses on reality. In Tamil it is called Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, a synopsis of his teaching. These 40 verses are very important piece of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi's teachings. 40 verses on reality was written by Ramana Maharshi at the request of Muruganar, who wanted a concise synopsis of Ramana's teaching and wanted 40 verses to fit a classical Hindu poetic form. Ramana wrote the verses as they came to him, and Muruganar arranged them in a particular order. Later Ramana wrote 40 additional verses, and the original 40 verses were put into a supplement to the 40 verses. The final verses are in this booklet. Advaita, non-duality, identity is the supreme doctrine expressed in these verses. Jnanamarga, the path of knowledge, is the approach to it. Self-inquiry, who am I, is the technique Bhagavan taught for this path. There is no more profound and comprehensive statement of it than his 40 verses on reality, or Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu in Tamil. It is generally admitted that Sri Bhagavan's ideas are often beyond the reach of the common reader and the beginner. They are made more difficult by his Tamil mode of expression and by the spontaneity with which he wrote the individual verses, for it was not his intention to produce a compact philosophical system or thesis. He wrote the verses as they occurred to him, and they were later arranged by a disciple in the order in which we see them in print. When undertaking this volume, I, the author, placed before me 6 different English translations, chose the versions common to the majority of them, and wrote these down in an almost conversational English. I avoided technical terms and difficult words so far as this could be done while remaining faithful to the original. When I had a doubt due to lack of agreement between the different translators, I sought the help of Tamil scholars in Vellore. I wrote brief notes on each verse, developing the verse's main points so that in some places the notes read like a paraphrase but without learned quotations or long dissertations. For all that seekers sadhaka need and want is to understand the spirit of Bhagavan's utterances and apply it in their spiritual practice sadhana. In these 40 verses, as the reader will observe, Bhagavan has touched on all the salient points of his teaching, constantly stressing the great value and efficacy of the vichara, or investigation into the nature of the investigator himself. All the masters of the Upanishads maintain that man is not the elements out of which his body is made, but the mind or intelligent principle. or being which uses the body. That is the serene, blissful self, the absolute. Second, less reality, which all are seeking consciously and unconsciously in different ways, devious or straight, wrong or right, and of which the sadhaka endeavors to have a direct and full knowledge. The synopsis, which follows, not only gives the gist of every verse but is also intended to help the reader to locate a specific subject. It takes the place of an index. Invocation, that is a sort of prayer to God or the deity. First, awareness is the nature of reality. Without awareness of reality, can a reality exist? Because this awareness reality, itself free from thought, exists as the source of all thoughts. It is called heart. How to know it? To be as it is, thought free in the heart, is to know it. This verse and the next form the invocation, which customarily precedes spiritual and poetic works in Indian literature. It may be addressed to a particular deity such as Ganpati, the Deva in charge of poetic effusions, or to the Devas in general, to a favorite Devi, or to the Guru, or to one of the three major divinities. But Bhagavan, recognizing a single reality from which all things proceed, makes his dedication to that as the pure awareness, chit, abiding in the heart as external existence, Sat or the absolute Brahma. The literal translation of the first sentence of this verse reads, can there be awareness of that which is other than existence? This makes knowledge or awareness the criterion of existence, because the non existent cannot make itself known. The color, for example, that is not visible, or the sound that is not audible, amounts to nothing. Second invocation, fear of death is the driving force behind the quest for immortality. Those who have an infinite fear of death take refuge in the feet of the Supreme Lord, who is without birth and death. Can the thought of death occur to those who have destroyed their I and mine and have become immortal? Those who most identify themselves with the body are the people who fear death most. Seeing the dissolution of the body, they deduce their own dissolution to be simultaneous with it and dread the terrible unknown that lurks behind it. Their only hope of safety lies there in the worship of the Almighty Lord, who alone is deathless. But those who, through the practice of sadhana or spiritual discipline, have transcended this false identification, no longer have bodies to be the victims of death. Even the thought of death does not occur to them. They are videhas, bodiless, although they continue to occupy a body. This verse also implies that by taking refuge in the Lord, these fear-torn people will, in course of time, so progress spiritually that they will be able to destroy their sense of I and mine and attain immortality, since the death of the ego will evidently destroy death and the thought of death. Now starts the actual verses. First verse. Awareness is all, the seer and seen, the real and apparent. Because the world is seen, we have to infer a common cause, a Lord possessing unlimited powers to appear as the diversity. The pictures consisting of names and forms, the seer, the canvas, the light, all these are He Himself. The 40 begins here. To understand Bhagavan's meaning, we have to use the key with which He supplies us in the invocation. There He declares reality to be the thought-free awareness which dwells in the heart. Here He brings in the world in order to meet on their own ground those disciples who do perceive a real external world. He is saying something like this: you see a world and ascribe an omnipotent creator to it. But as we have already seen, this creation is only an appearance, a manifestation of that awareness of which we were speaking. It has no more reality in itself than have the pictures projected on a screen. From the heart, thoughts spontaneously rise like vapor from the ocean and turn into a kaleidoscopic world of names, forms, colors, sounds, smells, and other impressions. These are in it or on it, as on a canvas of which the heart is itself the seer and the sight. Pure consciousness or pure mind is thus the pictures, the screen, the seer, and the light or sight. Stanza number 2. The tried God, soul, and world is the creation of the ego and disappears with ego. All schools of thought postulate the fundamental triad God, soul, and world, although all three are manifestations of the One. The belief that the three remains eternally last only as long as the I or ego lasts. To destroy the ego and remain in one's own state is best. Most religions are based on the assumption that the triad mentioned in the text is eternal. Bhagavan rejects this assumption as being the child of the ignorant ego which mistakes itself for the body. The I am the body notion compels the admissions of an individuality, jiva, a world, its creator, as three distinct, perennial, coexisting entities. Bhagavan, as we have seen, perceives a single existence of which These three are an illusory manifestation which, however, vanishes the moment the eternal I is apprehended and the ego perishes. Third verse. Speculations about God and world avail nothing. Self-realization is the heart's cry of all, of which of what avail to debate whether the world is real or unreal, sentient or insentient, pleasant or unpleasant, extinguishing the ego, transcending the world, realizing the self. That is the state which is dear to all and free from the sense of unity and duality. The same line of thoughts continue. Destruction of the ego is a sine qua non for the realization of the self within the heart. It brings to an end all speculation about reality and unreality, God and world, whose true nature will be revealed in actual experience. This is the most blissful, attainable state and beyond the plurality of the illusory world. Verse number 4. Form and formlessness of God depend on the ego's conception of itself. If the self be with form, God and the world will be also. If one be formless oneself, how and by whom can their forms be seen? Can there be sight without eyes? The self is the eye, the limitless eye. This refers to the jnani who, although having a body, seen himself as bodiless and formless, and so cannot see God or in fact see anything with form. The ajnanis, the non-realized, perceiving himself as a body, takes God also to be a body and worships him in all sorts of material, formal representations. Yet the fact remains that even he perceives everything through his own formless self, which we have granted to be the only seers, the only knowledge there is, the limitless I. Those who condemn idol worship forget that they themselves worship material symbols and icons and attribute to God forms, dimensions, positions, even sentiments and sense perceptions exactly as they do to themselves, having no experience or conception of a formless, formless, omniscient spirit, they feel literally lost at the idea of worshipping something not represented in a form. God thus appears according to the degree of realization of one's self. Can there be sight without eyes? Means that without consciousness there can be no knowledge of anything. Just as without a lamp none of the objects present in a dark room can be seen, can there be a world to an unconscious man? Verse number 5. The world is the body inclusive of the five seats, for without them the world cannot be conceived or perceived. The body is in the form of and includes the five seats. Is there a world apart from the body? Has anyone without a body see in the world. The body is a complex structure containing a large number of instruments or organs which the self as ego uses for a large number of purposes, including among others those of hearing, smelling, seeing, thinking, feeling, memorizing, and reasoning. The materials out of which these instruments or parts are made vary from the grossest to the finest. The Shastras, scriptures have arranged them in five groups. The Shastras, scriptures have arranged them in five groups. To each group, one seat of kosa is assigned. The kosa dealing with purely physical matter is called Annamaya kosa, the seat of food. The pra- Pranamaya kosa, the vital seat, looks after the fivefold functions of the vital energies: breathing, assimilation, generation, excretion, and locomotion. The Manomaya Kosha, mental seat, contains the faculties of mentation. The Vijnanamaya Kosha is the seat of the intellectual and reasoning faculties of scientific and philosophic thinking. And last is the Anandamaya Kosha, the seat of bliss or causal seat, which stores up within itself the karmic seeds of every birth and is concerned with that state in which profound peace is enjoyed by the dreamless sleeper. This kosa is made of the finest substance, sattva, which in itself is happy due to its freedom from the grossness and its close proximity to the blissful self. Thus, the term body includes all these kosas whose appearance and disappearance causes the appearance and disappearance of all objective and subjective perceptions. Assumptions of a body is therefore necessary for the world's enjoyment, and the body owes its existence, as we shall see in the next verse, to the five senses which are the properties of the mind. Verse number 6. The world is what the mind conceives through the senses. The world is but the fivefold sense objects which are the results of the five senses. Since the mind perceives the world through the senses, is there a world without the mind? Through the sensory organs lodged in the five kosas, the senses display before the mind a variety of objects: physical, vital, emotional, mental, and intellectual. Apart from the five senses perceptions, there all sorts of other internal senses which also arise from the mind, work through the mind, and are understood by the mind, such as the senses of time, of space, or eye and mind, and the artistic, ethical, religious, and spiritual senses, for instance. Since all these senses form the world, we, we known and have one common origin, which is the mind. The world cannot therefore be other than that mind. The world rises and sets with the knowledge of it. Both have their source in the self. although the world and the awareness of it rise and set together. It is by awareness that the world is known. The source from which the body rises and into which they both set always shine without itself rising or setting, that alone is real. This verse is reminiscent of the invocation and confirms the previous verse, which make awareness the criterion of existence as well as the source of the world. Awareness always shines as the limitless I mentioned in verse 4, the eternal knower. It goes without saying that the appearance of the world is simultaneous with the awareness of it, and disappearance of the world simultaneous with the withdrawal of the awareness. For the fact of the awareness, the world is the fact of the existence. We cannot affirm the existence of an object without first affirming awareness of it. Therefore, awareness is the only reality there is.